From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Well, I hope everyone out there had a very Merry Christmas with family and friends, and what a special time of year this is. But we've got another radio show for you here today during the Christmas season. We don't have any Christmas guests, so to speak, but we've got two good ones for you today. We're going to be talking about a brand new exhibit about miracles that's being presented at Towson University. It's called Felt Presence. And we're going to be talking with Mark Burchick about that really interesting exhibit that looks at relics and miracles and how we can perceive these things. And we'll be excited to talk to Mark later in the show. And of course, around Christmas time is, this is the birth of Christ, but we also focus in a special way around the Immaculate Conception and otherwise on the Virgin Mary. This is a time for Mary as well. And when we talk about Notre Dame, we talk about that cathedral in Paris, the one that burned down. And I've been wanting to do a program about the reconstruction of that great cathedral there in Paris. We're going to be talking with Professor Duncan Stroik about that perhaps miraculous reconstruction of Notre Dame de Paris. And you can check out my television series every week. It's called Explore with the Miracle Hunter every Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. We do a show where we travel around the world and we present the greatest miracles in history. And we'll be looking at the one from the United States, and that, of course, is Our Lady of Champion near Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so we'll be traveling to Champion, Wisconsin, where the Virgin Mary appeared to Belgian farm worker Adele Bryce in the year 1859, and this is the first and only church-approved Marian apparition in the history of the United States. So check that one out. That airs tonight on EWTN television at 6 p.m. Later in the show, we're going to be looking at the Might Be Saint of the Day. Today's Might Be Saint is Blessed Matthia de Norezia from Italy, who lived from 1253 to 1319. And the 365 Days with Mary Project, we look at the Marian devotion of the day from all around the world. For today's date, December 28th, we've got the Virgin of the Assumption from Elche in Spain in the year 1370. And the question of the week is a practical one. How can we see the names of the guests that are featured on the Miracle Hunter radio show? Let's take a look at the miracle news. We do this every week where we talk about the miracles happening around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And this is a miracle that I've seen with my own two eyes. This is, of course, the liquefaction or liquefaction of the blood of St. Januarius. It liquefies again following a prolonged wait. And so this extraordinary event, which did not occur in the morning as usual, finally happened at 5:40 p.m. on December 16th, the anniversary of the intervention of St. Januarius to prevent the effects of an eruption of Mount Vesuvius, the volcano, in 1631. And the faithful of the city of Naples in Italy experienced profound relief. And I've been there, I've seen it myself. There's really a buildup when you go to Naples for one of these feast days or one of these events. There's a lot of anxiety to find out if the liquefaction will in fact occur. And kept the city in suspense during the day on December 16th. And it did not occur in the morning as usual, but finally happened at 5:40 p.m. local time in the Naples Cathedral. But since 9 a.m., the reliquary containing the blood of the saint had been exposed to the faithful by Father Gregorio Vincenzo, but it remained solid until the afternoon. And after the miracle, the liquefied blood of the patron saint of the city was taken to the treasury chapel of the cathedral, where a holy mass was celebrated. Now, the miracle consists of a mass of blood adhering to the one side of this ampule or reliquary, and it's turned into complete liquid blood, and it covers the entire glass. And this extraordinary event has occurred since 1389 on three different occasions. September 19th every year, or every day, every year on that date, on the Feast of the Saint. On December 16th, the anniversary of the intervention to prevent the effects of the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 1631. And on on the Saturday before the first Sunday in May in memory of the transfer of these relics to Naples. And tradition has it that on December 16th, 1631, the faithful of Naples carried the relics of their patron saint in a procession to prevent the eruption of Mount Vesuvius from destroying the city. And during the procession, the lava miraculously stopped, it is said, and since then this event has been known as the lay people's miracle. And the liquefaction process sometimes takes hours or even days, but sometimes it doesn't happen at all, which Neapolitans interpret as a bad omen, as happening in 1939 before the outbreak of World War II, and also in 2020 with coronavirus. And the Catholic Church believes that the miracle, without scientific explanation, happens thanks to the dedication and prayers of the faithful. And with the exclamation, "The miracle has happened," the faithful go to the altar to kiss the relic and sing the Te Deum in thanksgiving. After the Archbishop of Naples, Cardinal Domenico Battaglia, has walked around the church holding this relic. And again, I was there on pilgrimage some years ago on this very feast day, and I saw this with my own two eyes. It's quite the event. But for the Neapolitans especially, this is a very good portent in the sense that we see the blood liquefying again. So hopefully it's a good year for Naples and for the world. Let's take a look at Catholic Pub Trivia. We do this every week where we ask a trivia question and give out a prize to an emailer that writes in the fastest with the correct answer. And the question from last week, we've been talking about canonization miracles. We talked with Father Gutierrez, the recipient of the Pier Giorgio Frassati miracle that's going to lead to his canonization in August. And and for people who want to go on pilgrimage to that Pier Giorgio Frassati canonization, I'll be leading one. You can go to 206tours.com/miraclehunter to join me on a trip to Rome. And we'll also be going to Milan, Turin, and Florence as long as we're there. And the question from last week, who was the last non-American saint to have the canonization miracle from the United States? That answer was Saint Titus Brandsma. He was the one, not from the United States, who received a miracle, and that was received by Father Michael Driscoll. You can go back in the audio archives. We interviewed Father Michael Driscoll back at the time of that event, and that was the last time a miracle from the United States was used for a non-American's canonization cause. That's a very specific trivia question, I know. And now this week, there's a lot of college football happening during this time of year, of course. And so the big trivia question for this week, who was the last Catholic university to win a college football national championship? Again, that question is, in the midst of all this college football, who was the last college university to win a college football national championship? And we'll see if you have the right answer. And maybe this year we'll see another Catholic university win it. We never know. But answers and winners will be posted on the show page of miraclehunter.com. And send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com if you think you know that answer. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Mark Burchick about his exhibit at Towson University, Felt Presence, which examines miracles and relics. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Well, I love when I meet people who have my shared interest in miracles. Maybe a lot of people do. Maybe Catholics and otherwise are interested in the supernatural because our faith needs to be a supernatural faith. So having that sort of backbone or understanding of the miraculous is important from my point of view. And of course, we have these bookend miracles in our Catholic faith, the incarnation and the resurrection. Without those, we don't have much to go on. So miracles should be important to all Catholics. But I was so excited to come across the work of Mark Burchick. And it's a university, or Towson University, had an exhibit related to miracles, and it was called Felt Presence. And it was put together by this Mark Burchick, and I think you're going to find it fascinating, some of the stuff that he put in that, and that is now going to be available online, so you don't have to go to that university to see it. It's going to be for the world to see. So we're so excited to welcome to the program today, Mark Burchick.
Hi, Michael. It's a pleasure to be chatting with you this morning, and I really appreciate the opportunity. I've been a big fan of your work and scholarship for a long time, and I've actually leaned on your website multiple times in the course of doing this research.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, this is obviously I'm all miracles all the time, and it's good to meet other people who have a focus on miracles as well. So tell us a little bit about this exhibit at Towson University. How did it come to be in the first place? What got you going on the topic?
Right. Okay, so the show explores a couple major themes that I think are relevant to Catholic visual history. And so first is this tradition of Kyriopeta images. And if you're not familiar, this is the Greek term for images that are alleged to be made without human hand. And we think of notable examples like the Shroud of Turin and the Our Lady of Guadalupe tilma. I was realizing that this tradition felt connected to some of the conversations we're beginning to have surrounding AI-generated images. There's a similar question that's posed of a Kyriopeta, which is where do these images come from? And, what or who is making them? So with the Kyriopeta, people of faith have conclusions that suggest there's likely divine origins here, and there's a lot of scientific skepticism surrounding those stories. And then I think for broad swaths of the population who maybe aren't familiar with how AI technologies work, there's this question about who or what is making these images. Is there some kind of non-human intelligence involved? And I can unequivocally say that's not the case, but I don't know if you've ever worked with AI generation technologies, but they feel miraculous. You sit at a computer, you type in a text prompt, and then you receive this image almost instantaneously that appears photorealistic. It can emulate the work of masters, Matisse, Picasso, Rembrandt, you name it. So I was asking questions about how are AI images going to affect society? We've already seen this in our news cycle. They're going to upend notions of truth and objectivity. I think there's also a conversation to be had here in regards to in what ways are contemporary images like relics. We think about images of our families and our loved ones, and after they pass away, we believe that images of our loved ones still seem to carry some of their presence. And this tradition comes directly out of the veneration of the relics of the saints, and the ways in which images of the saints displayed alongside the relics came to be seen as carriers of their presence. There was initially this one-to-one connection where any image of a saint displayed alongside their relics was needed to help emphasize for an illiterate population who these people were. Mm-hmm. And then over time, the relics and the images themselves were considered to both be containers of the saint's presence. So it's my hope to show how this continuity has kind of come into today and help to inform how and why images are in some ways like relics, and in some cases might literally be relics.
Yeah, amazing. And for those people who don't know, I think that it may surprise some people, maybe people who aren't Catholic, about these Kyriopeta images. We talk about things like Our Lady of Guadalupe, the tilma, or the Shroud of Turin. Are there others that you point to in your exhibit or your discussion of this topic that people should know about?
Yeah. So the major inspiration that set me off on this journey, looking at that historical tradition, is that my own family alleges to have an Kyriopeta image. So this is a rose petal that was in my grandmother's possession when she passed away. We think it dates to about the 1930s. And depending on who you talk to within the family, there's a couple different origin stories for how this image came to be. It's a rose petal house in a little hand-bound reliquary, just simple plastic with a red cord wrapped around it. And it has a very, very clear image of a crucifix and what appears to be like a rose petal bouquet or something next to it. And like I said, depending on who you talk to, you get different origin stories for this image. In one version, there was a parish priest who blessed this bouquet of roses, which were then distributed to the congregation, and the image seemingly manifested at some point later. And then in another version, this was a rose petal that was plucked by my grandmother from a funeral of her friend, and at some point she pressed the petal in her Bible, and the image seemed to have miraculously appeared years later. And it's worth noting that there was no images in the Bible from which it could have transferred from. So this story fascinated me because we have all these different versions of what the story are, but not an explanation for how the image might have been made. I'm aware that there are conventional ways to place an image on a rose petal, and so I sought out some ways to replicate how this might have been made. It wasn't necessarily my intention to disprove a miraculous origin because, like I said, there's these interesting stories that go along with it, but I did want to better understand how this could have been faked if it was. Could you etch on it? Could you stamp it? And to make a long story short, what I did was I settled on a photographic process called chlorophyll, where you essentially sunburn an image into a living plant matter under really, really strong sun exposure. And while I was able to create some really incredible images, what I could not account for was how the image would fade over time. So if you've ever done any darkroom photography, you know how important it is to fix the image so that it doesn't continue to expose. There are ways to halt the chlorophyll process, but they're really aggressive on plant matter, and it's really hard not to destroy fragile rose petals in the process. You can picture just how delicate the handling has to be so that it doesn't tear, it doesn't deteriorate. And of all of the images I created for my exhibition, almost all of them have faded within 3 to 6 months, so I'm constantly having to produce them. So considering that this petal from my grandmother dates to the 1930s, I have a really hard time understanding how that image is so well preserved after such a long time. And it's for that reason that I can't rule out miraculous origin.
Yeah, so interesting. And there is some tradition of rose petals with miraculous images. I think in the Philippines, that's the most likely place that you might find them. And you see people like Brother Carmelo Cortez traveling around and producing these images on the spot. And even Rhoda Wise, the servant of God on the path to sainthood, who was the one who set Mother Angelica off on her path to found EWTN. There's a rose petal like that at her home as well that is considered potentially miraculous. So this is an interesting thing that you have in your own family as well. We're talking today with Mark Burchick about his exhibit at Towson University called Felt Presence. And for this exhibit, what is your hope, perhaps, for evangelization, or what are you seeing at least? For obviously Catholics have this penchant for believing in miracles and finding miracles important to their faith, and not everybody is like that. Of course, non-believers might they might be interested in miracles. What has been the response of people who aren't necessarily coming from a faith background to what you're doing with miracles? Right.
Yeah. So that's a great question. I like to think of the show as an opportunity for my audience to practice discernment. So I'm like you said, I'm playing the show on a secular state university campus. I'm speaking to a predominantly non-religious young audience who likely have no idea some of the histories of these traditions. And one perfect example is I feature Fatima in the exhibition. And I think many people, if you're familiar with Fatima, you're familiar with the miracle of the sun, with the Marian apparition that's associated there. But perhaps slightly less known is the phenomenon of a rose petal shower that was associated with it. There was allegations that during the apparitions that were interchangeably described as rose petals, or angel hair is also shows up in the testimony, would fall from the sky and disappear just out of reach of the crowds. So I elected to create some AI-generated photos of this event. And we have all of these amazing photographs of the massive crowds at Fatima, but we don't have any photographs that actually point to the miracles that are alleged to have taken place there. So alongside that, though, we do have massive amounts of eyewitness testimony. There was journalists, there was lawyers, there was clergy, respected politicians who all testified that something miraculous did happen. So my question was related to, we have this testimony, but we don't have images that show what actually happened. And I realized using AI, we could actually emulate the aesthetic of a 1917 glass plate negative camera. I could take the digital asset and place these AI images on glass plate negatives. So when you come into the exhibition, that's what you actually see. And you're met at the entrance to the exhibit with a statement that says, as you enter the space, Events will unfold which may seem impossible. Mm-hmm. I have no intention of misleading you or deceiving you. These things happened. And so again, speaking back to who my audience is, largely non-religious folk who maybe have no idea what Fatima is, they're going to be confronted with these glass plate negatives. They were produced in a darkroom. They look photoreal. And then they depict things that our contemporary rationalist scientific mindset could say could not possibly exist. Okay. So it's my goal for those folks who come to the show to leave the exhibition and want to do their own research and to better understand that I have not actually lied to them. These things did happen, and Fatima changed the course of the 20th century. It's still playing a role today. And if and when they see that these images that I created do not actually exist, when they go online and see that, there's not actually photos of the miracle of the sun, there's not actually photos of this rose petal fall, I want them to question how I might have done that and then why I might have done that. And like I said, I think this is a practice of discernment, and it's going to be essential in our contemporary media landscape where we have to question in what ways are AI images going to affect society.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating stuff. We've been talking today with Mark Burchick about this exhibit at Towson University and his research on felt presence is the name of it. And of course, people aren't able to necessarily get to Towson to see this or to experience it in person. But the beautiful thing is you're actually making it available online now. Tell us a little bit for people who want to learn more about you and to experience this exhibit in a digital format. What's the best place that they can go?
Yeah, thank you. It's it'll be housed online on my website, which is mjburchick.com. And there will be links there to my social media content, the link to the actual digital exhibition. And the big difference between the physical exhibition and the digital exhibition is the physical exhibition largely does not provide you a lot of the context. It comes from this contemporary art world context where you don't want to provide people a lot of context. You want them to bring their own journey of discovery into the space. Whereas the digital exhibition, I really outline my process and my thinking. So they're meant to be companion pieces. But outside of just exploring Fatima, I also made a pilgrimage to the Maria Stein Shrine of the Holy Relics in Maria Stein, Ohio, where I actually made some of the objects in the art exhibition relics of Therese of Lisieux and then Jacinta and Francisco Marto, who were the two younger Fatima visionaries. They're also considered to be the youngest saints of Catholicism. They were only recently made saints in 2017. And I detail some of the stories surrounding miraculous rose petals associated with Therese of Lisieux and the Marto siblings.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you for putting together this exhibit and shining the light on miracles and their importance in today's world and beyond. And so thank you so much, Mark, for joining us on today's program.
Cheers. Thank you, Michael.
God bless. That was Mark Burchick talking to us about his exhibit at Towson University, Felt Presence. People can go to mjburchick.com for more information and to check this out and to learn more about the great work of Mark Burchick. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I love getting the email questions, of course, but I really love answering them in person. And I travel around the country. I give maybe 20 talks a year at different universities or parishes or conferences or events. And I talk for about 45 minutes, usually about Eucharistic miracles these days, but also Marian apparitions and future American saints. But I always open it up at the end of the presentation to a discussion of questions. And I love to hear what people are thinking about in the world of miracles, and I do my best to answer them. So in order to get me to speak at your parish or your group, you can connect to the miraclehunter.com website and click on the Contact tab, and you can send me a message that way. But we got a great question over email, and this is more of a practical question rather than a miracle question. But if one person is wondering about this, I'm sure there are more. And so the question is, Dear Miracle Hunter, I really enjoy your radio show on Saturdays. There's one thing I highly recommend. Could you please spell the name of the persons that you're introducing on the radio for interviews? It's very frustrating trying to find more information when you don't know how to look up their names. Thanks for your help in this matter. Regards, Nancy V. Well, thanks, Nancy. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening to the show and being so interested in the guests that you want to find out more about them. There's a great way to find out the exact spelling about each show and actually to listen to the shows again if you missed part of it or you just liked it so much you want to hear it a second time. And you can go to the Miracle Hunter show page on EWTN.com, the website. So if you go to EWTN.com/radio/shows/miracle-hunter, or you do a simple Google search, EWTN Radio Miracle Hunter, it'll come right up and you'll get the show page and it'll show the archive of past shows. And listed there are the names of the guests spelled out for you and everything. And you can find out who's on each week's show and match them up. And again, you can listen to ones you missed and you can listen again to ones you really liked. And that again is EWTN.com/radio/shows/miracle-hunter, or do a simple Google search, EWTN Radio Miracle Hunter. Well, thanks, Nancy, for your question. And if you have a question for the Miracle Hunter, you can send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. We do this every week where we talk about the Marian devotion of the day as it lines up exactly to that day's date from around the world. And of course, we all know Fatima May 13th, or Guadalupe December 12th, or Lourdes February 11th, but believe it or not, there's a different other Marian devotion from somewhere around the world that lines up exactly to the day's date. And we're talking about feast days, we're talking about dates of a commemoration of miracles, maybe the building of a basilica to honor Mary under that title. But there's a different way to connect every day of the calendar year to Mary. And so for today's date, we've got the Virgin of the Assumption from Elche in Spain in the year 1370. And according to pious tradition, a lookout named Francesco Canto, watching the coast of Elche, spotted a chest floating in the sea on December 28, 1370. When he rode his horse back to tell the council, the Virgin went with him, and she waited at the Garden of the Gates until the council's official proclamation. The committee there found a chest with a statue of the Virgin of the Assumption and the libretto of a mystery play to reenact her Dormition and Assumption to heaven. The Misterio de Elche, the name for this play, is performed annually at the Feast of the Assumption in August. La Venida de la Virgen, the Coming of the Virgin, is remembered yearly on December 28th with a recreation of the events, and that is the Virgin of the Assumption from Elche in Spain in the year 1370. Let's take a look at They Might Be Saints. We do this every week. We talk about those people on the path to sainthood. We're talking about servant of God, venerables, blesseds before they have all their miracles and are declared saints by Rome. And we always try to keep you up to date on who's coming down the pipeline. And every couple months or so, there's news coming out of Rome, but that there's also announcements of the opening of canonization causes. And some people might remember that recently Pope Francis traveled to Belgium, and he sparked a little bit of controversy when I think he was trying to do something to inspire the Belgian people when he said, "I'm looking into the canonization of a former king of Belgium." And that seems to be something that the Belgian people might be proud of, that a former ruler of theirs might be considered for sainthood. Well, because King Baudouin of Belgium was so pro-life, it sparked the anger of some of the anti-Catholic Belgian people. So that was a little point of controversy. But in sometimes the Pope makes off-the-cuff statements. Sometimes he makes statements about future saints. I think the Pope isn't necessarily in charge of canonization processes. I mean, he might be the one who signs off in the end on a canonization, but it is not usually the motu proprio or the decision of the Pope on his own to canonize a saint. But in this case, it looks like he has sparked some interest in this canonization cause at the Dicastery for the Cause of Saints, because they've launched the cause for beatification and canonization of the former King of Belgium, Baudouin, from 1930 to 1993. That's when he lived. The Holy See announced on December 21st, 2024. And so the Dicastery for the Causes of Saints launched the cause for beatification and canonization of the former king of the Belgians, Baudouin, and the Holy See announced on December 21st. And this delicate file is being personally carried by Pope Francis, who is arguing for the monarch's opposition to the legalization of abortion in 1990. On September 29th, during the concluding Mass in his trip to Belgium, Pope Francis created a surprise by announcing that he would open the process of beatification for King Baudouin, who reigned over Belgium from 51 to 1993. And Francis held him up as an example of a ruler, praising in particular his refusal to endorse a homicidal law that's, quote, and this deeply Catholic king had refused to sign the legalization of abortion in 1990 and made himself unable to reign for 36 hours, and this procedure had allowed the promulgation of this law without royal countersignature. And the Pope's statement sparked a lively controversy and generated criticism from the Belgian government. It also surprised the country's episcopate. The bishops never asked for the beatification of King Baudouin, confided Bishop Guy Harpigny, the bishop of the Diocese of Tournai, on the set of a television show. Less than 3 months later, Rome has taken up this delicate matter, and the dicastery responsible for studying sainthood causes has begun the process by establishing a historical commission composed of, quote, specialists in archival research and the history of Belgium, end quote. That's what the press release says. And these experts will gather the documentation and assess whether the life of the deceased king meets the criteria required to be recognized as a saint. And usually the candidates' files are submitted to Rome after a study in the diocese of the future saints. This time, the Pope, who's eager to personally advance this cause, entrusted the Roman dicastery to initiate the work directly. So this is very different. And so this process could meet with some reservations because King Baudouin remains a personality of contemporary history about whom many things remain to be discovered. That's what a Belgian journalist has said about this. And the Archbishop in the Democratic Republic of the Congo declared last October that the assassination of Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba was a black stain on the King Baudouin case and gave the persistent controversy surrounding the possible involvement of Belgium in the elimination of this figure of the independence movement in Congo. So a little bit of intrigue and controversy related to this announcement, but we see that the Pope is moving forward with the cause for the beatification of King Baudouin of Belgium opening up and being run out of Rome rather than the local diocese. So we'll stay tuned for that. Let's take a look at the Might Be Saint of the Day. We do this every week where we talk about a person on the path to sainthood whose feast day or death anniversary lines up with the day's date. The Might Be Saint for today, December 28th, is Blessed Matthias de Nazaré, who lived from the years 1253 to 1319 in Italy. She was born on March 1st in 1253 in Matalica in Italy, and she was born to the nobility, the only child of Don Galtiero Nazaré and his wife Sabila, and from her youth, Matthias preferred a simple life and rejected all the pomp and circumstance of court life. When her father threatened her with an arranged marriage, she fled to the convent of Santa Maddalena de Matalica in Italy and became a Benedictine nun, and she served as the abbess of the house for 40 years. The convent later adopted the rule of the Poor Clares, and so Matthias is often listed as a Poor Clare. In 1758, the house was renamed Beata Matthias in her honor. And she died on December 28, 1319 in Matalica in Italy of natural causes, and reinterred near the high altar in 1536 and again in 1756, and she was found incorrupt. In the year 1765, Pope Clement XIII confirmed her cultus and therefore made her a blessed. So with one miracle, Blessed Matthias de Nazaré from Italy will go on to be named Saint Matthias of Nazaré. And that's today's Might Be Saint of the Day. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Professor Duncan Stroik of the University of Notre Dame about the reconstruction of Notre Dame de Paris. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show. on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Of course, when we talk about titles of the Virgin Mary, Marian apparitions or otherwise, there's a handful of them from France. We talk about Notre Dame as the beginning of their title. But when we hear the name Notre Dame, we think, of course, about Notre Dame de Paris, that incredible cathedral that suffered the ravages of fire 5 years ago. I remember leading a pilgrimage there in 2019, and it was such a beautiful trip. We went all over France, to Paray-le-Monial, to Lourdes, to Paris, and it was a beautiful trip. But the low light of the trip was when we arrived at that cathedral of Notre Dame, and we saw the spires burned off, and we weren't able to go inside, of course. And so I know people for some years have been wanting to get back and see that again, and I know the world, the Catholic world, has suffered watching that destruction, that church go up in flames. But exciting news from this past month. We finally, after 5 years, the church has been reopened to great fanfare around the world. And there were something like 170 cardinals there on December 8th for the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception. And the Archbishop of Paris knocked on those doors the night before in a classic traditional way to open that up. And it's, from my eyes, not even having been there in person, it seems like the restoration is truly beautiful. And we're so excited today to be talking to one of the true experts on architecture from the United States, and that is Professor Duncan Stroik from the University of Notre Dame. Welcome to the program today, Duncan.
Great to be here, Michael.
It's great to have you on. And this was such big news, of course, the reopening of Notre Dame de Paris. And I think the Catholic world celebrated in a big way. But 5 years ago, this was such a dark moment. I think so many people were caught up in sadness and despair when they saw one of these great symbols of the Catholic Church going up in flames. Talk a little bit about 5 years ago, your experience perhaps with witnessing this on television or otherwise, and how you felt about that.
Well, I would say two things. On the one hand, it was a moment of pathos and great sadness and shock, a little bit like some of us who saw in real time or even afterwards the destruction of the two towers in New York 25 years ago. And so it's just kind of, how can this happen, you know? But the second reaction for me was, well, the French are great builders. They built this 800 years ago. They can rebuild this, and they have the craftsmen. They have some of the greatest craftsmen in the world living in France doing, repairs on their buildings. So I had some great hope, and it's really come to fruition, I would say. And
from your architectural perspective, talk to us a little bit about the damage that was incurred. I know it could have been worse. They had 500 firemen working tirelessly to put out those flames and to save what they could, but a tremendous amount of damage was done. Talk to us about what was incurred in that event.
It's a very interesting story because, as everyone knows, there was a fire in the attic, and there was construction going on at the time, and so there's different theories about how it could have happened, cigarettes or electrical or this or that. But there's a couple of things that are very problematic about the story. One, a cigarette takes a long time, or any kind of fire would take a long time to start, smolder, and turn into flames, and then turn into the kind of flames that could engulf really thick pieces of wood. These are really heavy-duty, massive beams in the trusses. So that was the first thing. How did this happen? We still don't know 5 years later how it happened. There's different theories. They've decided it was not arson, blah, blah, blah. But we really don't know how it happened. So that's weird. And then second of all, people probably remember that someone was notified that there was a problem and they went to the wrong place. So that's kind of sticky. And so it meant that catching the fire was kind of about another 45 minutes late. But given that, the firefighters did an amazing job, and they tried to protect the building and the front towers and the big rose windows and the transepts and a number of things that they were concerned about. Even the buttresses, the flying buttresses, they were worried that if one of those was damaged. But then, a wall could fall in or fall out, and that could lead to even greater destructions. They were very smart about it. However, that great spire, which is about 315 feet off the ground, caught on fire from the attic, and it just went right up like a chimney, and it burned pretty quickly, and tons of wood and lead fell 315 feet down onto the roof, through the wood, through the stone roof, and down to the floor. And that was the greatest damage, and very dangerous because now you're damaging the stone ceiling, which is connected to the stone walls. And I think there's 5 big holes in the ceiling, the stone ceiling. And stone ceilings do okay in fire. I say okay, whatever that means. But they're pretty fire resistant. But they're not very good at resisting 100 tons of wood and lead falling through on top of them.
After that event, of course, there was the whole conversation about what would happen next. The cathedral is not owned by the Catholic Church; it is owned by the government, right? And so
yes.
The question was, how would this be rebuilt, and in what manner would it be? Would it be modernized? Would it be changed and quote unquote improved? What was your sense of how that process went? The decision to move forward and to restore it using to its original glory and using older technologies, perhaps, to mimic the construction of the original one.
Yes, that was a very scary time, and that the general sentiment from Americans, and it also seemed from French, which is the most important thing, and then around the world, was to rebuild Notre Dame. And among those things are this great roof, which is a very important roof historically, 1260, the wooden technology that built this big span, 45 feet or so span of roof, but then this tower, which has become, part of the image of Notre Dame, has been the image of Notre Dame for almost 150 years. So, interestingly, the secular government, the President Macron and others, spoke about not rebuilding the roof and not rebuilding the spire and having an international competition and doing something more contemporary and something that would express not so much Notre Dame and the Catholic Church and the cathedral that it is, but expressing, Frenchness or modernity or, the fact that this great country is up to date. And not surprisingly, the architects from around the world, they were pretty excited about this because, unfortunately, the way that we train architects today is to focus on ourselves and on our personal expression and on modernity rather than conservation and beautification of existing monuments. I like to say that cathedrals have 3 enemies, and one is fire, one is barbarians, and then the other is iconoclasts. And modern architects, a lot of us are iconoclasts. And what that means is that we'll do damage to the building, not unlike the barbarians and the fire. And that was, I think we were narrowly saved from that because the president wanted it. He has control of the money. The elites wanted it in France. The cultural elites wanted it around the world. The architects and artists were very excited about this, to do a modern statement on this great building. And of course, the French are all thinking, they've done this a lot, but they're thinking about the glass pyramid in the Louvre and how wonderful that all is and how much people love that. And they just want to stick a glass pyramid on top of or the equivalent on top of Notre Dame, and that would make it a lot better for people, they thought.
Amazing. We're talking today with Professor Duncan Stroik from the University of Notre Dame about the reconstruction of Notre Dame de Paris. Of course, the cathedral that was just reopened on the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception on December 8th. Talk a little bit about the effort that went in, the process once they decided to restore it to its former glory and not do a modernist reinterpretation of it. Talk about the process of how they went about redoing this great work.
So, fortunately, the people of France spoke loudly to the government and said, we do not want a modern addition on our roof. We don't want a strange thing added, a tower that looks like a flame, or a glass atrium, or a swimming pool, or a restaurant on top of the Notre Dame. We want it to be rebuilt, and we want the interior to be rebuilt the way it was. So that was great, and then belatedly the president acceded to that and agreed that they would rebuild it. But one of the things he had said previously was we need to build it for 2024 when the Olympics are coming to France. It needs to happen, it's going to happen in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And one of the things at the time, a lot of us thought that was a crazy thing to say. He had no idea how long it would take to rebuild it. It's not his expertise, but he just came up with this number because of the Olympics. But the interesting thing is, you could say God works in interesting ways, that helped us, because the experts all told him there's no way we can do a new addition on the top of the roof. We cannot do that in 5 years. It's going to take a long time to design it, and then to have the technology to build it, and then to deal with all the historical experts on the existing building, and then sticking this metal thing on top of it. And so his 5-year wager helped us to rebuild it the way it was, because the preservationist and the architect in charge of Notre Dame, Philippe Villeneuve, said, we're ready to go. We can rebuild it. We already have sourced things. We've already talked to these people on the wood, and we've talked to these people in the stone, and we know where we can get it, and we've got friends in other countries that are willing to help, and we can start right away. And so I'm not an expert at how this was all done, but they had a lot of people running the program, you could say, as the architect in the architecture and engineering world, studying different problems, in different committees, studying different problems, the stone vaulting, the buttressing, how to support them, how to rebuild the roof and the spire. And one of the kind of miracles, you could say, about the whole thing was that a young architect had done as his graduate work to study the roof. They call it the forest, the roof of Notre Dame, the inside of the roof, how it was structured. And he had done that about 10 years before the fire. Remy Froment is his name. And Remy and another fellow had studied the roof, and they had drawn it all. They had figured out these trusses, how big they were, where they're located, and they're actually all different. They're quite, they have variety in them. And so they had studied this and the spire. And so he was immediately he was on board, and he has become kind of second in command. He has this expertise in the roof that he had studied, and now it has to be rebuilt. So they, using his knowledge and Philippe Villeneuve's knowledge and much great expertise in France with restoration, they have tried to rebuild it exactly the way it was, including using, old axes, not old, but new axes that simulate a medieval axe. So they cut the wood, the trees, into square rectangular beams using axes the way they would have been done in the 1200s. So very exciting kind of craftsmanship, organization by Philippe Villeneuve and others to get hundreds of people to organize to design it, and then thousands, they say 2,000 workers to actually work on it. That's kind of a crazy thing to do, and we have to do it now. We can't wait. But it has to be done right. It has to be done right. We can't do second class, second rate, and we can't compromise. And of course, there's always compromises, but it's kind of overwhelming what they were able to accomplish, I believe.
Yeah, what an incredible challenge. And from your perspective as an architect, in your expert view, how did they do? What was the result of this fast forwarded and intentional to keep it true to its former self? How did they do in restoring this back to its former glories?
I think they did magnificently. And what I was really excited to see was all the hand craftsmanship, from the axes that restored most of the roof beams, and I think it was about 1,500 trees, old growth trees that they used to hand-hewn. And then the way that the wood is joined together, not with steel, but with pegs and with things like mortise and tenon and dovetails. People that do woodworking know all these terms, but different ways to join pieces of wood together using wood, basically, and cuts. And that was very exciting to see that. And if anyone's watched the videos of the restoration or recent videos, you'll see some of this craftsmanship. And of course, the other thing to me, which is wild, is that they restored a couple of vaults that were destroyed. The one over the crossing, and the one next to that, and then some other parts of the stone roof. And the stone roof is about 6 inches thick, and it's curved. It's curved in pointed arches and vaulting, fairly complex, and it has keystones, and it has arches and different, shaped stones. And those had to all be figured out and recarved the way they were in the sizes that they were and create this vault. So now we have a new stone vault like was done in the 1200s, and it shows what modern man can do. Modern man can actually build like the medievals if he wants. And that's very exciting to me, and I think the people who were involved in this just got a great thrill out of doing all this. It was hard work. It was very fast. And using these old materials and these old tools, it's very exciting to think that we could do this on an old building. It means we could also do it on a new building. And to me, that gives great hope for architecture and sacred architecture, that we could learn from this catastrophe and this phoenix-like, resurrection.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you, Professor Duncan Stroik from the University of Notre Dame, for joining us to give your reflections on the reconstruction of Notre Dame de Paris. And I know we met each other years ago through the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in La Crosse, Wisconsin. You've worked on that beautiful church there, that shrine there, and now they're going forward and they're building the long planned for retreat houses and further developments there. And I encourage people to find out more about that at the Guadalupe Shrine.org. And for how can people find out about you and your work in architecture, Professor Stroik? Where's the best place for people can go?
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. Well, we just want to promote all things beautiful and traditional and sacred. I have two things that your listeners might be interested in. One is a magazine that I edit called Sacred Architecture and sacredarchitecture.org. And if you write to me, I'll send you a free copy. And then stroik.com, STROIK.com.
Wonderful. Well, we're so grateful to you, Professor Stroik, for joining us on today's program.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for talking about this great new restored cathedral.
God bless. And that was Professor Duncan Stroik from the University of Notre Dame. And that's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to EWTN.com/radio. Check out the audio archives or download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Professor Duncan Stroik from the University of Notre Dame, and also Mark Burchick and his Towson University exhibit, Felt Presence. Check out my program, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, Champion. We'll be traveling to Champion, Wisconsin, where the Virgin Mary appeared to Belgian farm worker Adele Bryce in the year 1859. This is the first and only church-approved Marian apparition in the United States. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt. Happy New Year, everyone.